Hello, welcome to Standing Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of Primitives by Eric Krauss. This is a sci-fi post-apocalyptic book from May 2002 from Briar Rose Press. I received this book from the publisher in exchange for a fair review, so thank you very much. I did not expect this beautiful, beautiful hardcover to arrive. I expected just like a paperback, but no, it's really nice, and I'm really happy to have it on my shelves. I've got a spot right there for it. This book was actually given to me for review on postapocalypmedia.com, where I am a writer. Check us out. If you like post-apocalyptic stuff, you should follow our newsletter because basically that's all we talk about. But I figured sharing the review on here would be helpful to the publisher and the author as well. As such, the review is focused a bit on post-apocalyptic stuff more than anything else, but that's fine because that's what the book's about. An exciting, fast-paced, and realistic post-apocalyptic novel, Primitives delves deep into what makes us human. So what is it about? 30 years after the Great Fatigue infected the globe and the cure regressed most of the human race to a primitive state, Seth Keller makes a gruesome discovery in his adoptive father's makeshift lab. This revelation forces him to leave the safety of his desert home and the only other person he has ever known. 3,000 miles away in the jungles of Costa Rica, Sarah Peoples has made her own discovery, just as horrific and just as life-changing. It will take her far from the fledgling colony of New Haven, yet never out of reach of its ruthless authoritarian leader. On separate journeys a world away, Seth and Sarah find their fates crashing together in an epic struggle between good and evil, where the differences aren't always clear. Among the grim realities of civilization's demise, they discover that some of the remaining survivors may pose an even greater threat than the abominations they were taught to fear. Fighting for their lives, they're confounded with a haunting question: is humanity worth saving? Spoiler alert, no, I'm kidding. So, it's beautiful. I'm taking the jacket off just because it's awkward. Before I even start, look at this book. Just look at it. It's so pretty. Look at the back. Not only is the jacket stunning, there are images inside. So each chapter has little pictures at the start. I'll show you a couple, even though it's extremely awkward to do with the hardcover. There's pictures like that, though, as well, here and there. It's really fun. This is obviously my favorite picture because I love the desert. Yeah, so that really helped. I mean, I'm a sucker for pretty books, and so that really helped me going in, putting me in a good mood. So if you like books that are really pretty and well put together, you would just buy this just because it looks nice. That aside, I really, really, really enjoyed this. I'm going to say flat out that if you are a fan of post-apocalyptic stuff, you will love this. It's, as I said, it's set 30 years after the event, so we see isolated pockets of civilization, traveling small groups of people. There are mentions of raiders. There's an interesting take on zombies that I'll get into in a minute, because it's not really zombies, and survivalism. There's a lot of the tropes we love of the genre, but it doesn't feel tropey. I don't mind tropey, but some people do, so I figured I'd point that out. Speaking of tropes, one of my favorite tropes in post-apocalyptic literature is when the characters take a quest across the wasteland. Hence why my own book features that, because I'm obsessed with that. And this book gives us two of these journeys on a converging path. We see suburbia, deranged wildlife, records of dismal situations, and Las Vegas, and San Diego. I could have used a bit more description of these areas, though, to be completely honest. I kind of wish there was a few sentences more, maybe a paragraph kind of describing the landscape. There was a bit of it, but I could have used a bit more. In terms of tone, while this is a serious novel, it's not kind of campy and lighthearted. The novel is not as depressing as The Road, but has a similar feel given how empty everything feels. There's not a lot of people in this book. This was actually a fascinating element that I really enjoyed. Seth's journey specifically at times felt like I was on that Lonesome Road DLC for Fall New Vegas. Yet that's not to say that the book is boring because there's no people in it. The book has a great snappy prose that moves at a pace that sometimes is almost too quick. Yet the action scenes are exciting, well described, and frequent. It's definitely a book that keeps you reading. I read far too late into the night most nights that I picked it up. The most interesting thing to me about this novel is its take on zombies. They're not really zombies. I won't spoil the how or the why it happens, as that's part of the fun. But in Super Mario Bros., the movie, when Toad is de-evolved, well, think about that, but far less ridiculous. In that humans have backtracked to a primitive state, hence the title. They just run amok, killing anyone who isn't them out of some kind of primordial instinct. The people who are left who aren't affected are suffering from this disease they call the fatigue, which makes them really tired unless they take this intravenous drug called NAD. It's quite complex, and when it first shows up, I was like, oh, what? But then it's explained later in more detail, wangling some current concerns I had about the science aspect of it, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's even more interesting when you find out that in the author's note, Krauss himself suffered from a debilitating disease that was very similar to what happens in the book. So the descriptions of it, and like what it feels like, feel authentic and accurate. And I really kind of appreciated that. I always love when authors bring in those kind of aspects of their life to kind of heighten the realism of something. The plot is quite simple, but it's a quest novel. Get to point A. I liked this about it, though. That's not to say there aren't some twists in the plot or any of it is expected. It's really fun and keeps you on the edge of your seat. I flew through it, as I said. I couldn't put it down. I liked the characters. Sarah and Seth both want to leave their homes, but for different reasons. Sarah was great because she's not, as happens a lot in the genre, a cold and aloof perfect killer. She's a normal human woman who just so happens to be tough and determined. She makes mistakes. She doesn't have any real fighting skills except for being scrappy, and I cared about what happened to her. Seth is a little less interesting to me because he's kind of bland, but that could be because Sarah's story is so compelling and kind of tense, and Seth, being raised with only his professor adopted father for company, hasn't really developed a personality yet because he doesn't have other people to kind of bounce himself off of. His arc, though, was also interesting in that dealt with trust and growth and society, basically. There's a few side characters. Kat, Bee, and Josh are the main three. They're distinct, and while we don't know a ton about them, they're interesting and they helped move the story. I liked Kat and Bee a bit because they seemed more... They had more depth than the typical hired goons. And Josh, he's a disgusting creep when you first meet him. He has moments where he seems he's not so bad, and then he's a disgusting creep some more. So his personality didn't feel like he was... He did feel like he was a real person. Just a jerk. On a personal note, I really liked the setting because I love Utah and Nevada. When I had a Jeep, I visited Moab and we, climbed a canyon. I just love that region of the United States. So anytime a book is set there, I'm just like, yes. One thing that isn't a problem, just a preference on my part, is that the book ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. This isn't something I'm particularly fond of. In truth, I don't like it. But the novel was so compelling, I'll overlook that, and I will read the next part for sure. If you love post-apocalyptic books, if you love books with snappy, quick action, with compelling characters, with, a serious approach to things, but not too serious that you're, depressed, and if you love books that are beautiful in their design, I highly, highly recommend you pick up Primitives. Thank you for watching.